Welcome everybody to the 7th, I think we're talking about. I get all my episode numbers confused here, but we have another episode of the monthly Moulage Monday Meetup, or M4. Reason I make it that is that you'll hopefully remember that it's always the 4th Monday of every month. And we've been doing this now all year. And so we're trying to do a 7 p.m. Eastern where we just get together and we kind of chat. We'll usually have a topic where we talk about that for a little bit. Then we downshift into questions. What worked? What didn't work? What did you try? What things have you always wondered about with Moulage? My name is David Schaublock, and we've got Bob Brown and some other really good, nice, intelligent, and smart people that are bringing their talents to this as well. So we want this to be relaxed, informal, and just come on in and have some fun. So first off, last month we were talking about, somebody brought up the topic of sculpting, and I am not a professional sculptor. I am a hack and I do the best I can with the tools I have. But they asked about, what clays to use and doing some basic sculpting. So that is why we are doing this topic on that this month. And so this is just going to get your toes wet on types of clay and how to kind of get started with things. And so when we're talking about sculpting, the very first thing we're going to talk about is clay. And not all clay is created equal. The number one thing I would say is you want to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that your clay does not have sulfur in it. And I will leave I'm going to bring up the chat and make sure somebody says, anybody have an idea of why we don't use clay, or if we have a guess where it might have sulfur in it, we do not use that types of clay. Anybody can either unmute or, nope, not the smell, which is funny because it doesn't smell. There we go. Nick's got it. Yes, silicone inhibition. So traditionally, we use a lot of silicone in our industry, and it's more specific. It's platinum cure silicone. So sulfur, latex, and other, which is, eye of newt, wing of bat type of things, will inhibit the cure. Or by inhibit, we mean will not ever let it harden up and firm up, or you'll have a skimmed layer right when you want all that detail that you will not get any sort of curing at all. So we want to make sure we're using a sulfur-free clay. And then when we try to shop around for clay, we found it is sulfur-free. We want to know the firmness of the silicone, or I mean the clay. And so a lot of people are like, well, do I need soft or medium or hard? And my answer is always get your darn hands on it, because not all medium is the same. So a lot of the plastilinas you'll find at the hobby stores locally, which that's not what this is, but I'm going to hide it for that. But you'll get these blocks and you'll grab the clay and you'll say, okay, it's medium. Look, it's really soft and it's easy and it's nice and all that. And you'll think, well, that's what medium soft clay is like. And then you grab something like monster clay and listen real careful. It's hard as a rock, but that is their medium. And you'll find that a lot of the prosthetics grade clays are firmer. So if I take a chunk of, this is a Chavant contour, it takes a lot more effort to kind of mold it and work with it than something else that may be labeled like a plastilina or whatever you find in the hobby stores that hopefully is sulfur free. But a lot of times they don't tell you, so you got to kind of pray and hope, or just buy the good stuff. But not all medium clay is the same. So getting what knowing what you're getting is going to be really key. And there's a lot of clays out there. This is Chavant, company owned by Smooth On. Now, I am wearing the Smooth On hat because I've had it on all day. Usually I don't wear hats for this, but you know what? I just left it on. So not sponsored or anything like that. I just use the stuff because it's so darn good. But they own Chavant company, and this is the NSP, or non-sulfur clay. Or is it Protolina? I don't remember what they call it. Yeah. But Okay.
Protolina, yep.
So it's non-sulfur protolina, and they tend to go to the Italian names because that's the history and the heritage of that. So non-sulfur. And just because you're buying Chavant doesn't mean that it's going to be sulfur free, because I went and was really in a hurry somewhere and I bought some Chavant from a totally different industry supply house. And as soon as I got it in my car and I was driving away, I'd already bought it. I didn't realize it had sulfur in it. So Chavant NSP is a good one that usually you can get in blocks and you can work with. My new favorite that I have found is Chavant's Contour. It's a dark, dark gray, and I really, really enjoy it. It's got a nice tacky, I can get really nice blending edges. It's firm but still pliable at room temperature, which brings up another thing is that a lot of times when you buy a good clay, you can do things to it, add heat by a number of different ways, and therefore you can use it a little bit better. So this has been in my toaster oven at about 160 degrees. I go 140 to 170 depending on what I want to do with it. And now it is much more pliable, much softer, and it's not even liquid, okay? But I can still work with it. And if I put it down on a board, I can mash it down a lot easier with a lot less effort, because for about a half hour or so, I put it in a glass dish and I just went ahead and heated it up a little bit. And some of this is kind of a liquid. And that's okay depending on what you're trying to do with it. But some of it is just soft enough that I can really get it down very quickly and work with it very, very quickly. And this happens to be a tile. So just a very cheap, bought it at Lowe's, very flat floor tile. It is a gloss finish. I find that works for me real, real well. But what I can do is I can mash a whole bunch down, make good contact here, and the tile is cool, and it's going to cool down my clay, and I don't have to wait for it as long. You can use melamine boards, you can use tiles, use what you got and what works for you. I find that tiles work really, really well for me. So if you heat your clay to about 140, 170, there's actual real clay warmers and things like that, but I'm not buying that. I bought a inexpensive toaster oven that I wasn't using for food anymore, and that's what I use that in. But also, there's a whole bunch of specialty clays out there. There's two types of clay that Bob and I really like. One is called monster clay. Another one is called alien clay. And a lot of them come in these containers like this. And so monster clay comes in a different container. This is the container it comes in. And it's this nice big round plastic container that you can warm so that your clay goes to a liquid consistency. Anybody have an idea of what? Good question came up. Did my wife approve that using that dish? Yes, she did. I've had that dish longer than I've had her. That tells you I've got to have that dish for a very, very long time. But if I could get my clay to a liquid consistency, what kinds of things could you do with it that would be a benefit to have it to an absolute liquid consistency? Well, how about something like a life cast? So this was a life cast I took of me, and I ended up heating the mold, heating the clay to a liquid, and I was able to pour it in here. And now, as you see, I was starting to cut out the eyes, and I could actually resculpt or sculpt injuries in there. But the whole thing is clay, and it's a clay representation of what I'm trying to use or what I'm trying to modify. So I know that a lot of people will take life casts of arms and legs and then pour the molten clay in there, let it dry. This is very, very, very hot when we're talking about liquid clay. Make sure you're using a heat sensitive or heat safe apron, some gloves. Be safe. But you can get a lot of cool effects, because I'm telling you right now, I could not sculpt. There are some very talented and wonderful people out there that can sculpt this quality or better. I am not one of those. So by life casting, I can actually use this to start. I have reference and I can then go ahead and modify this, do what I want, whatever injuries or whatever learning objectives I need to build into this, and go from there. I was working with the VA once, and their thing was they wanted to be able to life cast somebody's foot, and then we ended up heating up some monster clay, putting it in there because they were wanting to do diabetic foot ulcer trainers so that newly diagnosed diabetics could learn off those, and therefore could, they could make and mass produce trainers so that they didn't have to buy 100 of them from the big companies at the big cost. They could actually make them themselves. All right, we got a couple of questions here. We're going to jump in here. How do you factor shrinkage when casting clay? I made a mold off of a cast of a clay copy and it's too small to fit. Lynette, what clay were you using? Because I haven't had enough shrinkage that that's ever been a problem. I'm wondering if it was the clay you used. Bob, do you have anything? Do you get that?
No, I've never had any clay shrink on me. Never.
Okay. Melted clay also sets from outside in. Yes, that is a very, very good point. So it is cooling down on the outside, which means the inside is still liquid molten. And if you're as impatient as I am, don't just leave it either. I wouldn't accelerate it. I wouldn't put it in the freezer, but I would definitely make sure you just leave it outside, allow it to cool and naturally. Lynette said, I pour liquid monster clay into my silicone mold. Interesting. Okay, Lynette, let's take this offline. We'll chat about this later and see what happened, because that's interesting. I know, like foam latex, a buddy of mine we were talking about earlier does foam latex, and with foam latex, you have to actually cast the pieces about 10% larger because you do get the pieces as they dry, they will shrink down and things like that. All right, so we're going to go back to this. So we've got different clays So the different makeups of them, how much wax is in them and how much other, with the manufacturers, different parts and pieces they put in there, you get different things. So whereas Bob loves to sculpt with monster clay, I find it just too darn hard and I can't get a blending edge. So learning these different clays, learning what's out there, trying to get your hands on them and play with them and find the ones you like is going to be key. A lot of times, like if you go to a Reynolds Advanced Material or if you deal with Monster Makers directly who does monster clay, you can get sample packs of the clay to be able to kind of play with on the small scale before you invest in a whole bunch of it. Usually when you're dealing with monster clay, you're talking about a 50-pound tub you're buying, or no, smaller than that. It's like 15-pound or something like that. But being able to have a smaller investment on that would be definitely key with that. So we've got some clay, we've picked some clays out, we've gotten some down. Now what do we do with it? If we talk about tools, really your imagination is the only limiting factor. I will say that I started out with the very cheapest sculpting tools that you can get from Amazon for I think $10 for a bajillion tools. And then when my youngest came along and he wanted to sculpt a little bit, I bought another set just for him because he'd steal all mine. And he still steals all mine. But they're inexpensive enough that it's okay. And I like having a bunch of tools that you're not sinking a bunch of money into, because here's the thing. We are all a little bit of hoarders and completionists, and we want to get all of the toys that we can. So having a variety to learn about and to play with when you start is going to be really kind of a neat thing to have. But in the end, you'll probably only use about 3, 4, maybe 5. I mean, and Bob's giggling because, yeah. Hey Bob, how many tools do you have versus how many you actually use?
I have 4 tools that I use, and really I only use this one.
Ah.
And I have, honestly, David, I have maybe 100, maybe not quite that many, but close.
I have so many. I really like cutting edge sculptures tools, and you can see that I've had to rebuild them. They've got some really tiny ones. They've got some really big ones. They have sets by some awesome sculptors that, of course, if I fanboy them, I want to buy their sets and things like that. But then you buy them and you really use them and you like them. But I have my 4 or 5 that I go back to every time. And I'll see somebody's tools out there and I'm like, I really need to know. Calm down. Do you actually need them? Because in the beginning, that's what you'll do. You'll buy a lot of different things and you don't need to. Because the other thing is, um, you can go really, really far with a pair of scissors and a tongue depressor. And you,
Exactly. I have this in my left hand. I was going to show it to you. These were my first sculpting tools. And
yep.
so honestly, I still use them. A big, tongue depressor and a popsicle stick. They work just as well as a lot of these really expensive tools.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that, tools, very expensive and very specialized tools are great, but they're not as good as the tool that you know how to use that works for you and things like that. Another favorite of mine is a stipple sponge. I love a stipple sponge because you can kind of use it as a sanding paper to smooth down areas, and I use it all the time. As I always have some clayed up stipple sponges that I use, or a lot of times we'll have the cotton tipped applicators. And an interesting thing that I found out was that so these are really fragile and they break really, really easily. But of course, they're the ones that we have, and you can get a really sharp edge and you can do some neat stuff with them. But I was watching Adam Savage and he was turned on to there are actually ones of these that come out that are bamboo and they're a lot more strong. And I haven't ordered any yet, but it's in my Amazon cart to order at some point. And they're not that expensive. So you can go crazy with tools and you can get the very expensive stuff. But like he said, we all start with either what we've got available to us. A pocket knife done safely is okay, but honestly, a tongue depressor, broken, cut, and done 100 different ways, you can get a lot of really neat effects off that. I mean, starting with things that are just around your shop, you can get away with a whole bunch of things that are really easy. One thing Bob was talking about is one thing I liked was I made these, and these are different angles from 5 degrees to 30 degrees. And all they basically are cutters that are at a precise degree angle so that when you actually get this clay down, I can very quickly smooth. I'm going to move some of this out of the way. And I haven't made these available yet because I'm still like being a nerd about the details. But I can very quickly and very easily smooth down and pull a sharp edge on clay. Because, okay, things drive me crazy. And I know it's a short drive, but there's nothing that drives me more crazy than making a nice long laceration and you make the entire thing. You can't see shadows and highlights unless you're really good at, using a flashlight down on it. But it's never until you cast the piece and then you cast your first thing, you go to put it on somebody and you see this nice long laceration and the whole edge is like like that. And it's never until you've invested the time, effort, and money that, the actual laceration looks great. But then the rest of it is all like ups and downs and ups and downs. And that's why I made these, because I can pull very quickly, I can pull a sharp edge. And I know, Bob, you said you liked these, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yep.
love them. I'd never tried them. I know you sent me some a while back, and I something always came up, and I just couldn't use it and whatever. So the other day I sat down and did some stuff, and yeah, it's like, where have you been all my life? You know?
Well, and I remember the very first time I told you about them, you're like, but what are they for? And a lot of these things, it's hard to tell until you actually get your hands on it. It's hard to tell. So, okay, from here on out, the actual sculpting, like I said, I'm not an expert at sculpting. I'm not even that great at it. But there's a lot of good references out there. I tend to reference the Battles with Bits of Rubber podcast, which has Stuart Bray and Todd Debrasini. Stuart Bray has a lot of great sculpting videos out there to get started with things, and a lot of it is just getting your hands, getting clay under your fingernails, and kind of working with it. But the other thing that hangs a lot of people up is skin texturing and skin detail, and it's one of these things where you could spend a whole lot of time to really obsess about it. I know because I have. But this is where I'm going to throw things over to Bob and let him talk about what he does for skin texturing and skin detail.
Are you ready? Here we go. This is the lesson that I have I'm faking. Okay, what I have here, you guys can see this, right? I don't know.
Yes,
Can you
sir.
see this? I don't know if you recognize these or not.
Oh, yeah.
I pulled these out of my closet, an old closet the other day. These are the molds that we sell. These are the original sculpts from the mold. Just anyway, that's amazing. So let's talk about skin textures. And I want you to remember this. If you remember anything about skin textures, it's all about the X. All skin texture, whether you're a shark, you're a bumblebee, or you're a human, all texture is about the X. Everything in different
Power of
ways.
the X. The power of
Exactly.
the X.
So anyway, so I've got this piece of paper here to try and give you a really quick idea what I'm talking about. Okay, all texture is this. Okay, it's just X's over and over and over. And they're not perfect, they're constantly random. And that will give you the really good skin texture. It looks stupid on paper, but trust me, when you do this with clay, it's going to be great. The other way I do skin texture, probably more often than not, is I do a squiggly line like this. And then I do another squiggly line, and then another squiggly line, and another squiggly line. And so they're all kind of like this, arced like that. Then I'll take another squiggly line and I'll do it the opposite way. Again, it doesn't look great on paper, but trust me, this is what works. Now I'm going to show you how. All right, we're going to take this. I have a bunch of different tools that I use. This is let me get this whiteboard here. This is probably my favorite. And yeah, this is a little spendy. This is a CES tool, by the way, David. This is a line tool. This is for hair or texture, skin texture. And these are ones that I made out of brass tubing. And I have no clue where I got the little wires from, but I think it was electrical wire. So anyway, you can use just about anything. These are really cheap. You can get these off of Amazon. And I've spread them all out on here. They're fairly close there and really close on here. And I did that for different reasons. But so what we're going to do is we're going to take a piece of clay and I'm going to show you what it's like when we do the squiggly lines, the arcs. Okay, it's going to go like this. Can everybody see that?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
so we're going to do squiggly lines and it's arced down. Now I'm going to take squiggly lines and go the opposite way. I don't know if you can hear my dogs barking, they're hungry. Okay, now it doesn't look like much, does it? Well, that's because we got a lot of crap on there. You've got all those little balls of clay. To get rid of that stuff, you need baby powder, cornstarch, whatever. So you take this, go like that, dab it on there, and gently brush it away. That'll get rid of all your balls of clay. And then you can take your piece again, go back, and this will help get rid of those balls of clay. Okay, a little bit more stuff here, powder. Now, I don't know how well you can see these. Can you see the lines, guys, if I
Yep.
do oblique lighting?
Tot- Totally
Okay.
can see it.
It probably,
Yep.
it probably doesn't look great on here, but trust me, it's going to be some really good wrinkles. The other way to do it is I use this or this side, I guess I should say, for longer ones.
Yeah, that's basically
Can you
what I
see?
just did here too. And so I do the baby powder sometimes, but a lot of times I'll just use a stipple sponge and kind of soften up the things by just kind of rotationally sanding a little bit as
Yeah, you
well.
can
And
get
that's
rid of them. What I found with me anyway, and it's probably my monster clay, is that what happens is a little balls of clay when I go to sand it, they start to fill in my lines, my little wrinkles. So anyway, once that is done, and this isn't very good, I understand that, guys. I wish I don't have the time to actually sit here and do it
it's demo
perfectly.
good, Bob. It's demo
Yeah.
good. And
So
then
what we do, what we're going to do then is we're going to take some. I use naphtha. I use naphtha, and what that does, that's going to smooth everything out. There's little ridges on every one of those wrinkles, and right now at this particular time, I don't want that on my wrinkles. So the naphtha will smooth it all out. Fluid, basic Runson lighter fluid.
so this is what it is. It's called it's naphtha. You can usually find it at Lowe's, things like that. It is flammable. You do not use it around open flames, and you want to make sure you have enough ventilation and things like that. You could also use Novox by Smooth On. It's a little bit better for your lungs and things like that. But this is naphtha. It is lighter fluid basically, and yeah, you need to make sure you're using this in a well ventilated space. So it is NAPHTHA, naphtha.
Unless you want to
Right.
set it
Or
on
by
fire.
lighter fluid, same thing. Okay, so what I've done is I went over it with the naphtha. I've made some more X's. And this time I didn't, I don't know if you noticed, I probably should have said something, but I didn't do the squiggly lines. I just did straight X's. And it's not that like that. They're X's that are really lazy. And they're just laying there on each other. So I'll show you what that's going to look like here. Get some more powder. And the thing about this powder is you don't have to wait until you're done doing your X's. You can do it. I most times actually I put powder on there, then I do my X's, and that gets rid of my little clay balls.
So Nick was also talking about the other trick of using a Ziploc bag and poking texture in or doing the X's and that sort of thing. So what that does is give a softer sort of, drag mark through it.
There, yeah.
Yeah, and that's
ready.
oh, see that. So what I find is I grab the plastic off of my clay. So this is just off my smooth on cap contour because it's a little bit more rigid. So it's thinner yet more rigid, and I get a better effect from that. And that's this where I start using these YK tools. I used to do all of my texturing by hand with a very, very small loop. This is a CES tool as well, but now, boy, I like this little stamper, and it's just got a whole bunch of little pokey stampers, and it speeds things up. But there's nothing wrong with taking a toothpick. And sometimes I used to take a toothpick and I'd sand it so it was more of ovals. Because if you look at a pore, it is more of a kind of a stretched bump or divot that you're putting in there. And I used to hand do. If you've ever seen my suture pads, those were all hand textured, poke, 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 over and over and over again. But sorry, Bob, back to you.
No, I do that too. I mean, I used to do my wrinkles that way, my skin texturing with this plastic, but I've gotten away from that because I can control the depth, and it works good. Don't get me wrong. It's just that I've done this for so darn long that I need to be able to control the depth of my wrinkles because not every wrinkle Not every little tiny line on there on a real person is the same depth. Maybe that doesn't make sense, but it does in my world. So I don't know. Can you see the texture now? The texture coming through there? I don't know if you can see that.
Yep. Sorry. Totally can see that, Bob. Totally
I
can.
can see it. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's finished. You can go ahead, like you said, David, using a stipple sponge, you can go over it to kind of smooth things out, if you want to do that. The next thing to do is you want to do, this is where I use the plastic. What did I do? Here it is. I have my plastic. I put it over the top, and I just use a ballpoint pen. Okay, I'm just doing this. And this is where you go brain dead. This is where I hopefully have some good music on, or a movie or something, and I am just poking this pen into the plastic, not really hard, but enough. So when you take it away, and I realize this is going to be hard to see, but I'm pointing, can you see the texture here? The pores?
Yeah. And you're building up different layers of texture, because I do my pokey first, and I do the either the drag S's or the X's. I do that afterwards. So everybody does it differently.
What I do is I do my X's, I do my pores, I come back, I do X's, I come back, I do pores. So I do it probably 3 to 4 different times, which gives me the depth, the varying depths I need for my wrinkles, and also gives. I mean, there's a lot going on in the texture when you do it like that. It takes more time. Some people don't do it, but that's the way I've always done it, and it seems to work. Now, really quickly, I am going to show you how to do fat. Okay, hopefully how to do fat. Here is going to be a laceration. Okay, there's our laceration. Maybe a little bit. We need fat. Fat to me is one of the easiest things to do. You take your clay, another piece of clay, not the one you're working on, and you take this particular tool, or one you can shave. You can basically shave little thin strips. Can you see those? I hope.
Yep. Totally.
Okay. So we're going to get some more of those. Actually, I have a bunch of them over here. I should just grab those. But you take these really thin shavings, and then you take them, you ball them up, and they have to be thin. Trust me on this one. I used to, I'm lazy. And so I used to say, well, I'll just make them thicker and it'll work. Well, it doesn't work as well. So I just balled this up. Can you see that? Okay, I hope so, because I'm going to use it. Okay, so I'm going to put it right there. Now, it's all wrinkled. It's got little divots in it. It's wrinkled. Okay, I'm going to take another one. And I'll just do this, a couple of these here. Okay, so I'll put that one right there. I got another one here that looks like it might work. Okay, and put that right here. All right, so that's what we got. Doesn't look like much. But as you can see, they're all, they're not flat, they're not round. There's all kinds of different things going on with them. So now what I do is, once again, I dip into my naphtha and I saturate these. And you need a brush that's fairly stiff. And all I do is tap. That's all I'm doing. It's a tap. The clay will start to dissolve, start to melt, and it will go into the other wall of the sculpt. And then, the fortunate thing is, you can't appreciate this until you are finished with your sculpt, but until you paint it. And when these are painted kind of your yellowish white, That's when you really appreciate it. I will show you an example.
So
Okay,
you can
well,
actually, oh, yep, sorry.
this isn't a great one, but you can see this one. As you can see, that's all crap in there that was done with the shavings. Okay, so you just keep going like this, and like it takes you a little bit of time, but you just keep doing that. Tap, tap, tap down on it till it starts to blend. If you see a space which starts to look flat from your tapping, you just take into your brush and just start making divots in it. We don't want straight lines.
No.
In anything. You don't want straight lines. Okay, now I understand that this probably, everybody's going, that's what he was going to show us? But yeah, this works. And it works really, really well. And the thing about it is, I could spend a lot of time doing this, making fat or making wrinkles. But actually, this is good enough. I could make a prosthetic out of this right now. And when it would be finished, you'd just be amazed. You go, wow, that looks real. So, like David said, the thing you need to do is you need to get out there, get some clay, get clay under your fingernails, grab a few tools, whether it's a tongue depressor and a popsicle stick or a couple of toothpicks. It doesn't matter. You can do anything with just about any tool. And so that's how it's going to work. That's how it works for me. That's what I do. And I'll show you a couple of these different ones. This is a sculpt that I made. It's on plastic, but this is a sculpt that I made, and this is the piece that came from it. Now this piece isn't finished yet, but there's what I did. I did the tap, 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 tap on this stuff right here, and that's what it turned into, and that turned into this.
So Bob, the question came up, is the other ones, show which ones are the silicone and which ones are the clay. And the gray one is the one that's clay, and the other ones are silicone, correct?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, I gotcha.
That's it.
Okay.
And the other thing I'll do, by the way, is I'll take some naphtha or Novox in a little CC cup, and I'll put little bits of clay in it, and I'll break it up, and I'll make almost a slip, and which is basically just a watered down or thinned down clay. And so I will paint that in my wounds, because a lot of times you want texture on your skin, but on the wounds we want it to shine. And so I will paint in the different with a very cheap brush and some thin down clay, and I'll paint that in my wounds, and you'll get a really, really neat effect. So another thing that I was shown, and obviously you don't do this in your lab, you don't do this in fiery areas, and you do this before you do any sort of solvents, so before you do any naphtha. But I was turned on to this little torch, and basically it's got a little loop of metal and a little bit of a area for fire, and it's using camping fluid or white gas. And so there we go. So basically you get a little tiny torch, and you can do a very pinpoint, if you can see it. I'm trying to do it in front of my face because I'm a very good canvas like that. But if you notice, you can get very pinpoints of heat this way. And these are very inexpensive, and they're kind of neat. But again, if you're going to use any solvents, don't use this, because this will set everything on fire and it's bad. So I use this before, and where it's just clay and none of my solvents are anywhere around. Solvents being naphtha, Novox, or any of the other flammable things that we use. But it's really nice to be able to get a real pinpointed heat to melt certain bits of clay, and then you can wait till it cools down, or even in its liquid state, you can do things to it to get some really nice texture. Also,
Right.
a lot of people will use the texture of things that are around. And by that, I mean, I've seen people take some broccoli they're not going to eat, they pour some silicone on it, they pull it off like that, and then they stamp that texture into clay. He was talking about orange peel. A lot of people will do the same thing. They'll use the textures of things around you. and put a little silicone on it, and a good firm silicone, and then you can press that texture into the clay. Also, there are companies that sell texture stamps, and I'm not going to be able to let you see the texture on it because it's real subtle, but these are by monster makers, and I'm able to push different texture into clay. So use things around you to help you be a better sculptor by, taking those textures and things around there. Ooh, Nick, you are on fire tonight. Yes, canned air is another great one. So what I'll do is I'll heat up my clay to not a molten, but really liquidy, and I'll hit it with canned air, and it will spatter around a little bit if it's too loose, but you can get some really neat textures out of that. So airbrush, canned air. Don't use any flammable gases like I may have accidentally done once. We didn't know it was flammable until somebody that knew all the safety of that chemical was like, no, you're not doing that ever again. Hey, Bob, real quick before we go on any farther, because I don't know if anybody's going to need to jump off at 8 o'clock. Do you want to show the piece that you decided you're wanting to give away?
Oh, yeah. What did I do with it? Oh, yeah. I posted it.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have it here. Actually, I think it's way downstairs.
Well, that's fine. So what I'm going to do, though, is I took the names of everybody that's in the room, and I put it into a picker, and I'm going to see if I can't do that. There we go. So you should be able to see. Okay, now can you see this spinner? What do you guys see on there now?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So I'm going to click to spin, and we're going to see who won. Looks like Celso. Looks like you won. So make sure you send an email to Bob. If you need his email, I have it. And looks like you won the piece.
The arm prosthetic that I posted. Well, this is how I did the texture for that. I used the cat brush. This is probably the easiest. And, like I said, I'm lazy. I want to get stuff done. I want to get it done right now. So you take a cat brush, you cut out a square of it, go to your piece, your clay, and do the same thing that I was doing with the tools, and just do squiggly lines, do X's. You're going to have to be a little harder with this stuff. And of course, here we got the balzo clay again. But I'll show you here. This works really well. And like I said, it's fast, it's easy, it's cheap. You don't have to have anything special. And actually, this is almost done. And you want to vary the pressure that you put on so you get light wrinkles, you get deeper wrinkles. Okay, let me grab my stuff here and we'll.
And like Nick was saying, you can use a plastic bag. Use a plastic bag over there to get real subtle wrinkles as well. In having the deep, thin, all that, having more texture is always better. And you just play with it and see what works for you.
You never want, it's like you don't want to do anything with straight lines, and you don't want to do anything the same depth. Just that's rules of sculpting when you're doing prosthetics. So I don't know how well you can see this, you guys. I'm trying to do it as fast as I can, but there are, I probably could have done a little harder, but that is basically the same thing I did with this, with the IB drug abuser thing. So I don't know if you can see that, but I have skin texture. I would use that right now for a prosthetic on a film. It looks better probably here. As David knows, my phone sucks with the camera. But anyway, it's just a cat brush and you're done. I mean, what, you get done in 30 seconds? So there you go.
I mean,
we got a lot more stuff to show you, but maybe we'll do that another time.
Yeah, this is just the basic stuff. This is stuff to get your mind and your thoughts set on fire and let you know that, I mean, come on, you can get a cat brush. I don't care where in the country or out of the country you live, you can find a cat brush and you can tear it apart even, or use it together, or just find out what works for you. find out and then share with all of us what worked for you. Show us what worked, what didn't, and things like that. How did you make the pokey holes? Dr. Coleman was asking.
I just
Put blobs of clay on there, squished them with my thumb, blended the edges in as best I could, took naphtha to make it smooth, and then
But what
just poked it
tool?
with a ballpoint pen.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah,
Well
I mean,
used.
ballpoint pen works out great. I really like, what I like is taking a toothpick, or even I've got this cotton applicator and I've got a real sharp point. So what I'll do is I'll blunt it off a little bit, and that gives me a kind of a wider pour sort of thing. And like Nick said, use the plastic and just tap, 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 tap. And then what I do is if I find something's too sharp or the detail's too much, I just get the stipple sponge. Now, here's my question. I'm going to put this question to the audience, and I want to make sure, because this is something that's come up before, and I want to see if anybody can remember. Do we ever buy stipple sponges as stipple sponges anymore?
No.
By the way, the answer is no. But tell me what you buy instead of stipple sponges to get a stipple sponge. That's it. Celso, you're earning your thing. So yeah, so if you buy fish filter reticulated foam, and you can buy this by the sheet for almost as much as you can buy one little stipple sponge, and therefore you can cut it up. You can buy it at whatever intensity, really chunky or reticulations or real fine, and you can buy them in sheets and cut off the sections you want, use it up, and when you don't want to clean it, you throw it away. And that, again, is another, I think that was Stuart Bray came up with that one. That was on the Battles of Bits and Rubber podcast. So Amazon, I buy my stuff, basically, or a fish supply house. So any sort of like pet store that is using fish filter, new, not used. And you can just buy sheets of it. And it's way cheaper, because just a little tiny stipple sponge like this is like $3. $3. You can get like for 20 or $15, you can get a whole sheet of it. And it is way cheaper that way. Because like Bob said, I love every time he says, well, I'm lazy. I'm like, that's what I say. I'm like, I don't want to work at cleaning these things. That's why I buy cheap brushes and cheap things that I can either get a really good effect out of for not much money, or I can not care about it and I can just throw it away. Of course, Alex. So, gutter foam from the hardware store is great too. Ooh, I bet it would be. That's one I'll have to try. It's a little bit more firm though, right? So for sanding, it would be good. So, interesting. Or at least the gutter foam I've seen is a little firmer. Thanks for helping. Oh, see you later, Ziso. Nice to see you.
Hi, Steve.
Yeah, it's a bit stiffer, but again, depending on how you use it, especially in this application, because I would worry about, for like, one of the quick tips I'm going to show about how you can just use blood paste and just do scrapes and scratches really, really quickly. So you'd want to be careful using it on real people with that, but that would be awesome. So that was longer than we usually go on the main topic. So now what I want to do is, ask your questions. What do you have? What do you want to know about, to ask anybody here in the room? So we want to hear from you. You can come off mute, you can cameras on, or you can put it in the text chat for the last bit. Technically we're over at 8, but we always go over. So what do you got for us? Or Nick, if you got more to share, by all means. What are the tricks that you like? Because Nick's put a lot of good stuff in this time. Oh, Nick, I said, do you have any tips and tricks that you want to, other stuff you want to share? By all means, come on. If you want to put it in chat, that's fine. Or if you want to come off mute and turn your cameras on, by all means, share if you'd like. You don't have to. I'm putting you on the spot. I know that. But anybody that's got questions too, put it in the chat or just freely ask.
Hey David, further up, somebody had asked, what do you use to stick your silicone to your mannequin and/or SP?
Got it. So for sticking silicone to silicone or silicone to humans, I use a prosthetic grade silicone adhesive, because what sticks to silicone? Silicone. My wife's right here. So it has to be a silicone based adhesive. Now, Dermatac is one that I use a lot because I've got so much of it. in the big list of videos that I need to do is one of them is to try a whole bunch of different, I'm looking at the big shelf of all kinds of different silicone prosthetic adhesives.
Do we grab anything for you?
No. But I want to test them all and see which one works best for our applications and things like that. But the silicone-based prosthetic adhesive is pricey. And so when you look at it, it's going to give you little palpitations. But I will say it lasts quite a long time and nothing else works like it. I know there's a big rumor out there that like Mastisol works. It does not. There's lots of different other things that people try to use, and the only thing that really used to stick to silicone is going to be a silicone-based prosthetics adhesive. The caution I will give you, though, is make sure it is a temporary adhesive. So there is Silpoxy if you want it to stick forever. There is prosthetic adhesives for a temporary stick. And we had one person in our industry have an unfortunate grabbed Silpoxy to temporarily glue something to their mannequin, and it's there for life. And we try to come up with some, creative ways of trying to get that off, and the answer is nope, it didn't. So just be very careful, and if when in doubt, drop in the Moulage Facebook group, text me. It's not like I'm hard to find. Text me, call me. I don't want you to have any problems. By all means, if you don't have my number, I'll give you my number. Most people in this room's got my number. So you can just text me, call me. Bob's pretty much, sorry, could you repeat that? Oh, I don't know what we're repeating now, but they were talking about sticking prosthetics to silicone mannequins or silicone to SPs, and I said a silicone prosthetic adhesive. So good. I'm glad you like it, Dr. Coleman. What other questions do we have? Well, if you don't have anything, this will be the end of the episode, and we will see you next month. My name is David Shablock. We got Bob Brown. If he says something, you'll get to see, I think it's Abby.
No.
Charlie.
Oh, I want to see Charlie. Oh, hi,
He's
Charlie.
my good boy. He's my good
Boy.
He is
Yeah.
a good boy. Oh,
He's 180-some pounds, a good boy.
oh, he's a good boy.
Yeah, we like our dogs around here. Ooh, Kane, once you're done sculpting with clay, how do you make the prosthetic? Oh, that's another month. So I'll tell you what, Chris, if we want to talk about, maybe I'll take a month and Bob will sculpt some things and I will sculpt some things and we'll talk about making the prosthetic because I do it a bunch of different ways. You can do the plastics, like this is a hard plastic that is called Smoothcast 300 from Smooth On, or do silicone. And then, of course, Bob's got his line of the Vacuform, which is a little bit more pricey to get going on, but it makes a really good mold very inexpensively. I think some of the people in here have gotten them. I hope you're enjoying them.
This is our pressure ulcer set.
Yeah, this is the newer set. This is the pressure ulcer. So what Bob was showing earlier, as far as the last piece, was I think it's that pressure ulcer, which you can't really tell. But the nice thing about a Vacuform mold that Bob's making is, so if you go to buy a mold, a singular mold out of silicone a lot of times is $50, $60, $80. Out of plastic, it's going to be a little bit less, but it's going to be, well, hold on, Dr. Coleman. I'll tell you, it's actually my website he's selling through. But what's great is the Vacuform molds, the entire set is, I think, $80 for 18 molds. And so that's pretty cool. Then that does not include the pressure ulcers. That's a separate kit. So simulationtech.com, simulation TEK, not TECH, .com is where the molds are he's offering through my website.
And they're really freaking cool.
And this is my wife off camera. She won't come pop on, but she's the one that makes sure they're shrunk wrap and packed and all nice and stuff like that.
This, hold on, let me find it. I'll show you. He had the original sculpt. I can find the piece. This is one of the original sculpts he showed. So that's what a piece looks like running it.
Yeah, so this is a silicone piece in the 18 mold set. So there's the actual mold, and then there's one of the unpainted pieces. So,
but he showed the original sculpt for it. So I just
for
want to
one
show
of
what
them.
it looked like.
Yep, earlier.
Yeah.
So,
Sorry, I got excited.
And then hopefully I'll have Moulage kits on there as well. There's merchandise for Simulation or Sim Geeks podcast, as well as some for this old mannequin, which is just me, versus the Sim Geeks podcast, which is me and Will. And we offer suture pads and all kinds of stuff. So, and we'll be offering more and more and more as I find more hours in the day. I don't have it here because I took it to work, but anybody in the room own a sim pad? Anybody ever dropped a sim pad or come close to dropping a sim pad? Well, I'm not going to tell you that that there's something coming, but there's something coming. So I've been hinting and teasing about that for a little bit. But yeah, $3,000 every time you drop one. So hopefully I'll give you a little bit of a safety measure on those if anybody's interested.
I figured since Bob showed me Terry, I'd come on screen.
So, all right. Well, if there's anything else you guys have, by all means, we both jump into the Facebook group, the Medical Moulage and Camaraderie Facebook group a lot. But we will see you guys both, all of you, next month for the M4.
I need to know how Abby's doing.
Oh, well, we already talked. I'll talk to you about that. But
Okay.
all right. Have a great evening. And thank you all so much.